What would you do if you knew for sure that if you did that thing, you wouldn't fail? What risks would you take if you knew that you wouldn't fail? If you knew that the risk was going to benefit you, even if you did quote unquote fail, it was going to help you in the long run. I'm Kim Gross, and I am the host of Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. And if you are a perfectionist or you have perfectionistic tendencies, if you are afraid of failing, if you resist stepping outside of your comfort zone, then this podcast is for you. Some people don't identify as being a perfectionist, but when I say things like, are you the type of person who is afraid to take risks? Are you the type of person who wants to stay safe? You like your comfort zone? Are you the type of person that you feel you have to get everything correct or do it perfectly all at once without allowing yourself a growth curve? Like if you're learning to cook or trying to learn a new language, you have this expectation that you're supposed to know how to do it all at once right away. There's no room for error, there's no room for making mistakes. So if you identify with anything that I'm just sharing, then chances are you have some tendencies to be a perfectionist. And what I want to talk about today as I start to round out the second quarter, which has been all about having more freedom. All of the episodes that I've been doing are centering around how to let go of your inner controller, how to let go of fear, how to unmask from people pleasing and perfectionism so that you can live with more freedom in your life. And certainly, the topic for today's episode, which is how the fear of failure is keeping you locked into this mental perfectionistic prison. So often I'll say that I help others to go from prison to paradise. And I don't mean a literal prison, I mean the prison of the mind, where we are feeling like victims. We're stuck in patterns. Masks are just another way of saying that we are caught in patterns. We have these patterns that we've been developing since we were little, and we are stuck in them. We're repeating them because we aren't aware that we have these patterns, or if we are aware, we don't know how to move ourselves out of it. We stay stuck because we don't have a pathway to help us move forward. Let me give you some examples and share some stories about how and when I have allowed the fear of failing prevent me from taking risks. And I will say that in these situations, in these examples, I did eventually push through only because I've been doing this work for so long. It is going to help me and be beneficial, and it's going to allow me to get to that place of paradise if I do the work on myself and I push through and I take the risk. But I want to share the process that I went through and the angst, the anguish that I felt with each of these situations. The first story that I want to share with you was back in May of 2020 when I started the podcast. Some of you may know that at the time I did have a co host, and she and I decided that we were going to do this podcast because, like many of the podcasts that started, in 2020. It was during COVID. And we would get on these calls anyway as friends, and we would have these deep conversations about life and about growing and personal growth. So we said one day, why don't we just start a podcast? And that's what we did. I got an intuitive hit or a download to call the podcast Masks Off. So at the time, it was just Masks Off. Let's be vulnerable. Let's take off our masks and share who we truly are. Well, that was terrifying for me because as a perfectionist, and even though I had already started doing my growth work and my healing work, it was still 5 years ago. And I was still in the thick of unmasking from perfectionism. A perfectionist wants others to see oneself as being perfect, without flaws, without showing vulnerability. And all of those things were the complete opposite of what the intent was for this podcast. This podcast is about being real, being authentic, showing up and being imperfect. I have shared so many stories here where I've showed my imperfections. I have showed up on this podcast and it wasn't a great episode. And yet I still record and release it. I have learned to be more vulnerable and to take my mask off, but it was very difficult in the beginning because I was afraid that two things. One, I was afraid of being exposed. The people that knew me the most would listen to an episode and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe that she's sharing that," or "I can't believe she's saying that," or "I didn't really know that about her." And so I had this huge fear of being exposed. And then there was a fear that we would do this podcast and it would completely flop. Like no one would listen to it and there would just be dead air out there. But again, going back to what I have been cultivating within myself is to learn how to have some courage and push through it anyway. I would have all of these emotions come up, all of these feelings of, oh my goodness, I can't believe that I just said that on the podcast. I can't believe that I released that. And what will people think? What will people say? Every time those emotions and feelings came up, I had to learn how to show up for myself and soothe the part of me that was afraid of being judged, afraid of being a failure, and let myself know and comfort myself that it was okay. And I would often remind myself of the Teddy Roosevelt quote of the man in the arena, which is so helpful because all I have to do when I'm afraid of someone judging me is remind myself of that quote, which, if you don't know what the quote is, I shared it just recently in an episode. What it essentially says is that if you are in the arena and you're doing the work and you're taking the risks to be vulnerable, to expose yourself, you're getting sweaty, you're getting dusty, you're getting bloody, you're in there, you're fighting, you're crawling, and you're getting knocked down, but you get back up. If you're in the arena, you're doing the work. But if you're in, and if you're worried about the people that are in the stands, that are the critics and aren't doing the work, the idea is that you don't need to give what those people say much credit because they're not in the arena doing the hard work. If you're one in the stands and not in the arena, then something to think about. I remind myself of that quote. It's a great tool to shift my mindset around that fear or worry of what will people be saying. And that's often a huge block to taking the risk. That fear of someone judging and criticizing does get in the way of a person feeling like they're going to fail. Okay, so then there was the Masks Off podcast. As time went on, I got more comfortable with being authentic and being vulnerable, sharing what was going on, sharing how I was missing the mark with my kids, how I was playing out old patterns over and over again. These are the things that I talked about all the time on this podcast. And if you're interested, you can go back 5 years ago to some of the older ones and see what I used to share at that time. It would be very interesting to hear some of those stories and how I showed up then. I started about 2 years after that. I went on TikTok and I started doing more on social media. I actually started going solo on the podcast in 2022. All of this was still very new, right? There was this huge fear of failing. It was about like, okay, how many likes am I getting? How many followers am I getting? And, you know, how many subscribers? And if I'm totally honest with you, because that's what I do, I call myself out and I try to keep it real with you and keep it 100, as they say. I still do sometimes, I still can fall into that place of looking for the number of followers, likes, subscribers, and then downloads. And if I don't have the numbers or the outcome that I think I'm supposed to have, I will have this super high expectation that I'm supposed to be meeting these benchmark numbers. I can sometimes go to the place of feeling like I'm not good enough or that I'm failing in some way. What am I doing wrong? And then I have to again come back. What's the tool? I come back with, why am I doing this podcast? I'm doing it because it helps me to come on every week and share my experience, strength, and hope. My true desire for this podcast is that if it inspires even just one of you to pause and become aware of the masks that you're wearing and the patterns that are keeping you stuck in a mental prison. If you feel like you're in this place of victimhood and are now inspired to do the healing work, you might even reach out to me and have a call because you want to work one on one and you want to really heal and you want to unhook from these patterns and you want to unmask. If it helps even just one of you, then it's worth me showing up. That one is a million. Then I'll get sidetracked again. I'll say, how come I'm stuck at this number for years or months? Why isn't it budging? Why aren't my on YouTube? Why am I not getting more subscribers? And then I have to follow it back up with what I just shared.
Hey, it's Kim here, interrupting your regularly scheduled podcast episode to let you know about an opportunity to go deeper into this work. I invite you to head over to Amazon.com and pick up your copy of my book, Free to Be A Pathway to Inner Liberation. If you are looking to unhook from people pleasing and perfectionistic patterns, if you're looking to have a better way of identifying your patterns and then how you can unhook so you can be free to step outside your comfort zone, free to have more meaningful relationships in your life, free to be your true self without hiding behind a mask any longer. If you desire any of this, then I encourage you to pick up your copy. And if you enjoy my book as much as I loved writing it, please go on over and leave a review on Amazon. You can leave a star review or written review. Now back to your regularly scheduled podcast episode.
So there's that. And then, of course, last October, I released my book, Free to Be a Pathway to Inner Liberation. I allowed my fear of failing to hold me back for almost 10 years because 10 years prior to the book being released, I would write in my journal that I should write a book. And I never did because the inner dialogue that I had about that was, well, who would want to read my book? Who would care enough to read my book? And if they didn't, then if no one bought the book, then I would feel like a failure. There are two caveats to that. One is that I wasn't ready spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and it just wasn't the time 10 years ago. When I did write the book, it was divine timing. Everything was perfect. It fell into place. The perfect editor, the perfect ghostwriter, the perfect title. I know I'm using that word perfect, but I'm using it loosely because nothing is perfect, right? But everything just fell into place. It was an affirmation for me that it was the right time to write the book. But I will say this, that after its release in October, there were times when I would feel like my book is not selling enough. I haven't sold enough copies. No one wants to read my book. My book is not meaningful. It's not inspirational. And I'll go to that place. I share that with you so that you can get a sense of what the inner dialogue can sound like. I'm sure most of you are fully aware of what your inner dialogue sounds like, how it shows up when it's telling you, don't do it, don't go out there, don't take that risk, stay in your comfort zone. You're not good enough. No one will like you. You have your own version, and maybe it's very similar to my version. If you're listening to this episode right now in its entirety, it's because you know what I'm saying. You can feel it, you can resonate with it. And at the end of the day, the same is true with my book. At least 10 or 20 people have read the book and shared how impactful it was for them or how they totally resonated with what I said and appreciated what I shared. So if there's never another single person who picks up and reads my book, but it has helped those people, that in and of itself is a worthwhile, valuable outcome, is it not? And I say that because it's also like I have to remind myself of that as well. Now, about the inner dialogue. It may continue to rear its head, even if you've done a ton of work. You've been doing the inner work, the healing work for as long as I have. You still may have that voice inside you that speaks and says, what if, or don't do it. And you might feel the fear come up. All that is happening is it's just another opportunity for you to go deeper. Please don't go to the place of saying, why am I still here? I've been doing this work for years and I still keep coming around to this place of I'm afraid of failing and it just keeps showing up. What is wrong with me? That's what a perfectionist will want to do and where you can tend to go. But I encourage you and invite you to not go to that place. This is a reminder for myself as I speak this to you. I'm saying it to help me because this weekend I have a book signing coming up at Halo Salt Cave in West Melbourne, Florida. And there have been a couple of moments where I've gone to, well, what if no one shows up? I've invited people that I know and I've told them about it. So, what if none of those people show up? What if the people who are in the salt cave don't even come over to me and acknowledge that I'm there or ask about the book? What if I just stand there for 2 hours and nothing happens? Like that would be the kind of language that would stop me or stop anyone from maybe doing it in the first place. I've had that thought, but I'm like, nope, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm showing up for myself. I'm showing up for the universe and saying that it is important to me to share my book, to spread my message, and to help other people learn how to be free to be their true selves. And if I didn't do this, if I allowed that fear, that inner critic, that voice to hold me back from doing this book signing, or even when I had a book club at my house last month and it was on my book, if I allowed those feelings, if I allowed that fear to rule, if I allowed my inner controller to take over, I would not be able to walk the walk. I would be a hypocrite and I would not be free. I would not be free because I would be allowing this fear to control me. So, what I'm saying is, it's not about eradicating the fear, it's not about eradicating the voice. It's about when it shows up, you become aware that it's showing up. It's a pattern that needs more healing. It's asking for your attention. It's really your inner child that is speaking to you and is afraid because at one point that was the reality. Your inner child was afraid at times or did take a risk and did step outside of your comfort zone and something happened that taught you don't do that. Like maybe, let's say, for example, if you were in middle school or grade school and you were raising your hand to answer questions that the teacher was asking, and then you got the wrong answer, your classmates might have laughed at you, or the teacher said something condescending, you felt shame, right? So, shame is a really good indicator of, or a way of keeping you from stepping outside your comfort zone. It can shut you down in a moment's notice. And I shared that with you on this podcast before when I tried out for Snow White. And when I tried out in softball to be a pitcher or to play first base, I was put in right field because I wasn't good enough for the others. The shame is what keeps us locked in. And that's what's really happening when that voice is coming up. It's your inner child. It really is a moment for you to create safety for yourself and reassure yourself that it's okay. There is nothing that is out there that's going to be that horrific that you can't get through it, right? That which doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And you can look at all the examples in your life or experiences as opportunity to grow rather than something is happening to you. How can you take this feeling, this emotion, this experience to help you heal and grow so that you can live with more freedom and take more risks? So whether you are wanting to write a book, maybe you want to leave your marriage of 20 years, 25 years, and you're afraid that if you leave, you will fail and can't do it on your own. Maybe you are wanting to start dating again and you're afraid that if you put yourself out there to date, that you're just going to be rejected and you're going to fail. You might experience fear of failing at being a parent. The guilt is killing you because you just keep feeling like you are falling short. You're not meeting the expectations, you're missing the mark. And so you feel like a big old failure as a mom. And so these, whatever it is for you that you is holding you back, I invite you to examine the areas in your life. Going back to the original question that I asked at the beginning, you could even journal on this because I do it all the time. One of the things that I wrote when I asked myself the question, what would I do if I knew that I couldn't fail? And the truth is, I'll share with you what I wrote down, and it is a dream that I have and that I would continue to follow through on if I knew that I wouldn't fail. And that is to open up a wellness center here in Florida. I've had to really practice what I preach. I've had to learn to walk the walk. And I keep following the breadcrumbs to see if the universe is in alignment with this dream of mine to open up a wellness center. Now, if it doesn't come to be, it's going to be because it wasn't the best thing for me. It wasn't in alignment with what my soul wants to do or needs to do. Or it just wasn't a smart business venture. It's not going to be because I have this fear of failing. That I can promise you because I am working through all of the energy blocks that I have around it. I'm using my 5 step power pathway all the time to recognize when my fear comes up that I would fail at having a wellness center. I own that I'm the only one who can do anything to change it. I create safety for my inner child or for the part of me that is afraid that I'm going to fail if I open up a wellness center, and I feel my feelings because in order to heal, you have to feel. I work with the patterns, I work with the energy, and I just do it every time it comes up. And so I know now that I can keep continuing to pursue the dream, and I can see what unfolds if the universe is in alignment with me. I invite you to journal. What would you do if you knew that you wouldn't fail or couldn't fail? As you write down what that thing is, lean into feeling the feelings that come up around your fear of failure. Then see if you can apply the different tools or strategies I shared throughout this episode, through my stories from beginning to end, the different strategies that I have used to help me overcome my fear of failure. And again, it's not about arriving at this place and all of a sudden, I'm never going to have the fear of failure again. It still comes up. It's about what you do when it comes up. I hope you found this episode to be of value. I hope it inspired you in some way, that maybe you'll just take a pause and see where you are really allowing fear of failing at whatever it is in your life that you're afraid of failing at, how it is keeping you stuck in this prison. It's controlling you. Your inner controller is having a field day and is driving the bus while you and your dreams sit in the back seat. And I hope that it inspires you to maybe be ready or curious about doing the healing work to create more safety and compassion and give you the courage, the inspiration, the motivation to take even a small step toward achieving your goals or your dreams. So, as always, thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful that you tune in and listen. And if you find this podcast to be beneficial in your life and you know someone who can also benefit from it, I ask you to share it and pay it forward. And this is actually a brave ask right now, one that I usually in the past would not have wanted to ask because then it might make me feel like I'm failing. But in all truth, I'm at a place now where I really do care about your thoughts and feedback as long as it's respectful and done in a kind way. I would love for you to share your feedback. If there's anything about the podcast that you think I could do differently that would be more beneficial, or if there's parts that you really like about it and would love to see me continuing to do.
Hey, Kim Gross here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. I invite you to hop on over to my website, kimgrosscoaching.com. Right there on the front page, there's a quiz for people pleasers and perfectionists. You can find out if you have tendencies. You can also get into my newsletter where you will be given valuable content every week on different topics I share here in the podcast. And if you really did enjoy this episode, if you found it helpful, if you found it valuable, please go to, if you're on YouTube, go and subscribe. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, then I invite you to leave a review. You can even do a star review. It doesn't have to be a written review. If you know of someone who can benefit from this podcast or this particular episode, please share it with them. I'll see you next time.